Good morning, everyone. Soter here for the wake up rundown of April 26th, this Thursday draft day. I will be talking about ELO. And, this is going to be a pretty rudimentary discussion, so if you know all about ELO, maybe you don't feel obliged to listen through this whole thing. But there's one thing about ranked ELO that I'm going to say just real quick, and then I'm going to get into talking about normal ELO. Now, the thing about ranked elo is a lot of times people are like, oh, duo queue with me. Um, and that is an issue. Duo queuing is a double-edged sword in that, you're inflating your elo on the basis that you're going to have better communication with your duo queue partner. So if you do not, and you do not have, you don't frequently play with that person, it's generally a disadvantage. So if you see someone that plays well one game, it doesn't actually behoove you to go into a duo queue game with them the next time. The other thing, I did a lot of requests for people to duo queue with me when they're, at 1200, 1400, or sub 1200 elo. They're like, oh, help me get out of elo hell. And the issue with that is, one, I generally just like solo queuing, but two, if I queued up with someone that was that low, one, we'd be matched up against, 1600 elo players or so, somewhere in the middle range. But more importantly, I would win perhaps 5 or 6 elo per game, and if we lost, which was, it's a possibility, I would lose closer to like 30 to 40 elo. So Riot has put in some really big, disincentives for duo queuing like over, 500, 600 elo. At some point, it just becomes really not worth it for the higher elo person because the possibility of them losing and the loss of elo is pretty dramatic. So, going back to normal elo for a moment here. Normal elo exists. You can no longer see it. Apparently, I've heard that in Season 1 or pre-Season 1, you could see your normal elo, but it was causing a lot of, dissension, and, normal games are actually for practice, for fun, so on and so forth, and it wasn't really creating the atmosphere that Riot wanted. So, they took away that number. But that doesn't mean it still doesn't exist. Certainly it does exist, and it is how matchmaking is done. And I bring this up because I remember back in the day, I didn't understand how this worked as a newer player. I just didn't understand for the longest time. For instance, I had a group of players, and they were all level 30. They'd all been playing for months, and I started playing with them. And they were good, and they carried me a lot of the time. But in every game that I played with them, I would do really poorly. It was a very odd occasion that I would actually do okay or do as well as, I would expect or as well as they would hope or whatnot. So it took me a long time to realize what was actually happening. When I played alone, I actually normally stomped games, but the thing is, I was like level 12 or 17 or 22 or whatnot, and when I played alone, I was playing against people of my own caliber. But when I played with these level 30 players who all had like really, really positive records, even back then they all had, hundreds of wins over losses, then I was pulled up into a much, much higher play quality, meaning my enemies were a lot better than I generally expected them to be. So my strategies and my laning that worked for me when I was a solo, like just queuing in solo, didn't any longer work. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're like queuing up with a new group of people, even in normals, realize that if they do have a lot more games than you, then you're generally going to be playing against a higher caliber of person. Also, you know, it's kind of on their shoulders, the people who have more experience, to carry you out of those games. Um, so generally let them play what they want to play, and if you're the lower, even normal elo person, try to fill in the spots, because, you should play the best of your ability, and, sometimes it makes sense for you to play what you're good at, but really, Riot expects and the system expects those people of the higher elo to play better, to carry harder, and ensure that the games are fair. But they make the games fair over a 5-person selection if you're queuing up with 5 people, or even if not, it's always 5 people, and their average elo is relatively close to the opposition's average elo. But you want to do your best to match up your high elo people against their high elo people and hope yours win out. Um, So anyways, that's just kind of my quick rundown on ELO. It can be really frustrating as a new player in not understanding all the intricacies of the system. People complain about matchmaking, but I think a lot of the complaints are because people don't realize it. And one of the common complaints that I see is, oh my goodness, I hate this matchmaking system. It keeps putting me in with feeders and leavers and AFKers. That's certainly unfortunate, and you can get in that system like if you're like a new player starting off now today. Unfortunately, you're going to probably lose more than you win, and you're going to be grouped up with people who lose more than they win, and oftentimes those people will be feeders or AFKers or whatnot. But the more you play, the better you play, the less you'll be actually matched up with those bad players. So yeah, whenever you're in a game, Riot does its best to match you up with, if you're just, solo going into normal games, Riot is doing its best to match you up with 9 other people all around your skill level. Um, so unfortunately, that means sometimes if you're not that great, like, and you're trying, sometimes it means you'll be matched up with people who are, perhaps a little bit better, but don't try, leave a lot, lag out, so on and so forth. But just keep on queuing up. The more wins you get, the better you will become, and the better your competition will become, and it makes for a more rewarding game. Not that you'll necessarily win more, but it'll be more rewarding in the sense there'll be less levers, less AFKers, less people that are just trolling for the sake of trolling. So that is kind of my lesson there. Normal elo does exist. Try to recognize how it is influencing your games, how it's matching you up, how the matchmaker works. And the matchmaker, that's how it works. It tries to match up people of similar elo to go against each other. And don't get too disheartened, especially if you're a new player, because it's really unfortunate with all like the Smurfs out there and all the trolls. I certainly understand that. I see that when I run Smurfs, and people are just like really mean, and I'm like, hey, these other people could actually be new at the game, so don't be mean to these new players. We want new players. We need more blood into League of Legends. The more people that play, the better it is going to be for everyone. But um, but yeah, there certainly are a lot of negative influences down there, and I hope Riot does something to fix that. But as of now, you just kind of have to be thick-skinned and try to get on through it. So that is my wake up rundown for this auspicious day. I'm very excited about draft day later tonight. We'll be partaking in that. Although I just did recall that I think I might be a little bit late uh, for the start, and I am really interested in seeing the first couple of picks. So hopefully we get those in. I'll have to look that up a little bit later. Going to try to do some solo queue streaming for you today. The first thing, however, I'm going to do is jump into a bot game to test my ping, because this entire week I've had really bad ping, sadly, and and it's really frustrating. I don't want to go into ranked games. Also, it generally makes sense to get into one warm-up game before you go into ranked every day. Don't always need it, but sometimes it really helps. So that's also something to consider. Anyways, we'll continue streaming. This is